They say men don't understand women, but here's the twist. Most men don't even understand themselves. Let that sink in. You walk through life thinking you're logical, in control, maybe even wise. But deep down, there's a blind spot, a weakness, a shadow you refuse to look at. And Plato, yes, the philosopher, not your modern-day dating coach, saw this thousands of years ago. You see, Plato never wrote about how to get the girl, how to be alpha, or how to win in relationships. He wasn't interested in games. What he cared about was truth. And for him, the greatest lie a man can live is the one he tells himself. Let's go back to one of his most powerful metaphors, the cave. In this story, people are chained in darkness, watching shadows flicker on a wall, believing those shadows are real. That's their reality. But it's not. Now here's the part most people miss, those shadows. They're not just political propaganda or media illusions. Sometimes the shadow is a woman, not the real woman in front of you, but the version in your mind, the idea, the fantasy, the illusion, the image you were fed since childhood, that she's soft, innocent, nurturing, and incapable of manipulation. That's the shadow you worship. She smiles, you call it love. She cries, you call it truth. She pulls away, you call it fate. But Plato would shake his head and say, "You're still in the cave, brother. You're staring at shadows and calling them reality." Let me tell you something that might hurt. Most men don't fall in love with a woman. They fall in love with how she makes them feel about themselves. That validation, that dopamine hit when she texts back, that feeling of being enough in her eyes. It's not love. It's a psychological high. A high that keeps you obedient, distracted, controlled. And here's what Plato really feared, not women, but the untrained male mind. He knew that a man who hasn't trained his soul, his discipline, his reason, becomes easy prey. Not because women are evil, but because she becomes a mirror. She reflects everything you're trying to avoid inside yourself. Plato once wrote, "The worst deception is self-deception." That's exactly what's happening. You think you're in control, but you've outsourced your identity to her gaze. You think she's your muse, but she's actually your mirror. And every time you chase, beg, or bend for her approval, you're not loving her, you're betraying yourself. Let's get deeper. Plato believed the soul is like a chariot pulled by two horses, one noble, one wild. The noble horse wants truth, discipline, purpose. The wild one? Pleasure, ego, beauty. Guess which horse most men listen to the moment a beautiful woman walks in the room? Yeah, you don't pull the reins, you don't slow the chariot down, you don't ask, "Where is she leading me?" You just go, blindly, fully, foolishly. And you call it destiny. You call it love. But Plato had another word for it. Madness. He called this kind of love divine madness. Romantic? Maybe. But let's not forget. It's still madness. It makes you forget your path. It makes you betray your values. It makes you build castles in the sky for a woman who never asked you to. And here's the cruel irony. She doesn't have to manipulate you. She just has to exist in your imagination as the one who can complete you. You do the rest, because the wild horse in your soul is stronger than your discipline. Plato didn't hate women. He just warned men not to turn them into gods. But what do? We chase her attention like it's salvation. We rewrite our goals to fit into her plans. We hand her the keys to our self-worth. And then we wonder why she loses respect. It's not because she's heartless. It's because you became spineless. She tests you, not to break you, but to see if there's a man behind the mask. Every time you fold, she learns something, that your principles were negotiable, that your confidence was fragile, that your power was borrowed, not earned. This is what Plato feared, not romance, not beauty, but the corruption of the soul. Because once you compromise who you are to get her, you've already lost her. And worse, you've lost yourself. So let me ask you something. When was the last time you looked in the mirror and asked, Why do I chase women who don't respect me? Why do I call it love when it's really validation? Why do I fold every time I'm tested? The answer isn't out there, it's inside you. Plato believed the soul is divided into three parts: reason, your logic, your clarity; spirit, your drive, your honor; appetite, your cravings, your ego. Most men live in appetite. She smiles, you chase. She withholds, you panic. She validates, you melt. That's not love, that's addiction. And if you keep feeding it, your soul shrinks, your mind weakens, your legacy disappears. But here's the hope. You can choose to train your mind to become what Plato called the just man, a man who rules himself. You don't need to dominate her. You don't need to win the relationship. You just need to master yourself. Because once you do that, you can love without losing yourself. You can lead without manipulation. You can see her clearly, not as a goddess, not as an enemy, but as a human being. And that, my friend, is where real power begins. Here's a truth most men aren't ready for. She's not testing your love. She's testing your strength, not your muscles, not your bank account, but your ability to stay grounded when your emotions scream, when your ego flares, when your appetite begs. And most men fail. Why? Because they were never trained to rule themselves. They were trained to impress her, worship her, please her. From childhood, we were told, if you treat her right, she'll choose you. If you prove your love, she'll never leave. If you sacrifice enough, you'll win her heart. But here's what Plato would say if he were alive today. You're not showing love. You're offering yourself as a slave. Think about that. Every time you change your values to match hers, every time you silence your truth to keep her around, every time you betray your purpose for her comfort, you're not loving her, you're abandoning yourself. Plato wrote that the man who cannot rule himself will be ruled by others. And what happens when a man's identity depends on a woman's approval? He becomes unstable. He becomes reactive. He becomes weak. She doesn't need to yell, she doesn't need to threaten, she only needs to suggest, to imply, to shift her energy just a little. And suddenly, you're chasing again. You change your schedule. You rewrite your goals. You walk on eggshells hoping to be enough, but she never asked for a servant, she wanted a sovereign. A man who leads with principle, not panic. That's the difference between a boy and a man. A boy asks, what does she want me to be? A man asks, who am I when no one's watching? A boy begs to be chosen. A man chooses himself first, and from that place invites her into his mission. And if she says no, he doesn't collapse. He recalibrates, because his value was never hers to define. Let's go back to Plato for a second. In the Republic, he warns that civilizations crumble, not from external enemies, but from internal decay, from people trading discipline for pleasure, from leaders who pander instead of lead, from men who fear discomfort more than deception. And that's what's happening today, on an individual level. You trade your soul for her smile. You call it connection, but it's emotional dependence. You think she holds the power, but you gave it away. You see, in Plato's world, a man isn't measured by how much he loves. He's measured by how well he loves without losing himself, because love without clarity becomes chaos. Let me put it like this. If her mood controls your mission, you're not in love, you're in chains. And here's the crazy part. She knows. It may be not in words, maybe not even consciously, but instinctively, emotionally, she feels it. She knows when your power is borrowed. She knows when your confidence is performative. She knows when you're orbiting her approval instead of living your truth. And when that happens, the respect fades. The attraction dies, the relationship collapses, not because she's cruel, but because she can't trust a man who can't trust himself. And deep down, you can't either. Let me make this more real. Look around. Men leaving their families for a woman who flatters them. Men abandoning their purpose for a fleeting connection. Men deleting their identities just to keep her around. This isn't love, this is collapse. And Plato saw it coming. He warned us in Laws. When men choose pleasure over order, their cities fall. What's a city but a reflection of its men? When men govern themselves, society stands. When men surrender to chaos, society crumbles. The same applies to your inner world. If your emotions run wild, if your ego guides your choices, if your craving for her validation overrides your mission, then you've already lost. But here's where it gets hopeful. Plato didn't just diagnose the disease. He offered the cure. Philosophical clarity. He believed every man must rise from the cave, face the light, confront the truths that hurt. Like this one. She's not your salvation, she's your mirror. And that mirror, it reflects everything you need to confront. Your fear of being alone, your addiction to validation, your failure to lead yourself. Most men see that reflection and run. But if you want to be free, you have to stare into it until the illusion breaks, because once the illusion breaks, the game ends. You stop reacting to her tests. You stop begging for her loyalty. You stop fearing her withdrawal. And you start living, not as her project, not as her puppet, but as your own man. You see, Plato believed the highest version of a man is what he called the philosopher king. Not a tyrant. Not a simp. Not a slave. But a man who's ruled himself. A man who seeks truth even when it's ugly. A man who chooses integrity over indulgence. A man who loves from clarity, not craving. And when you become that man, you don't have to chase her. You attract her, not with tricks, but with truth. Not with charm, but with character. Not with performance, but with presence. Let me say something most won't dare say out loud. She doesn't break you. You break yourself. And once you realize that, really realize it, you gain back something priceless. Your agency. You see, every time she pulls away and you panic, every time she disagrees and you fold, every time she tests your values and you surrender, you're not being hurt by her. You're being hurt by your attachment to the idea of her. And Plato warned us, the worst form of deception is self-deception. You think you love her, but you love the image you projected onto her. You love the way she fills your void. You love the way she validates your worth. That's not love. That's emotional dependency wearing a romantic costume. And here's the part that stings. She may walk away. She may lose respect. She may test you endlessly. But it's not because she's evil. It's because on some deep instinctual level, she knows you haven't mastered yourself yet. So let's flip the script. Instead of asking, how do I make her love me? How do I keep her? How do I win her back? Ask, what part of me gave my power away? What fear made me compromise my truth? What truth am I still running from? This is where Plato's real wisdom lives, not in ideas, but in action. You see, he didn't write philosophy for philosophers. He wrote for warriors of the mind, men willing to confront their illusions, men willing to suffer for truth, men willing to be alone if it means being whole, because the man who governs himself cannot be ruled, not by her tears, not by her beauty, not by her silence. He leads, not to dominate, but to anchor. He walks, in love, not to be completed, but to share wholeness. And if she can't walk with him, he doesn't beg. He blesses and moves on, because his mission was never about her. It was about truth. It was about freedom. It was about becoming the kind of man who doesn't need to be chosen, because he has already chosen himself. Now here's the hardest part. Society won't applaud you for this. They'll call you cold. They'll call you toxic. They'll call you arrogant. But what they're really saying is, how dare you escape the cave? How dare you stop chasing illusions? How dare you stop kneeling to beauty? How dare you become sovereign? Because the world thrives when men are weak. When men chase endlessly. When men confuse pleasure for purpose. But not you. You've seen too much. You've felt the pain of submission. You've tasted the betrayal of self-abandonment. And now, you choose differently. Not with resentment. Not with revenge. But with resolve. So next time she tests you, remember, she's not trying to destroy you. She's trying to reveal you. Will you fold, or will you rise? Will you betray your soul to keep her, or will you walk in truth, even if it means walking alone? That's what Plato meant when he spoke of the just man, the man who is guided by reason, the man who chooses principle over pleasure, the man who does not sell his soul for affection, and in doing so, he becomes unshakable. So here's my final challenge to you. Stop asking what women want. Start asking what truth demands. Because until you know who you are without her, you'll never be able to love her without losing yourself. And until you confront that, truly confront it, you'll never be free. If this message lit a fire in you, share it, like it, subscribe. Join this movement of men who are reclaiming their minds, their mission, and their truth. Because the world doesn't need more men chasing women. It needs more men chasing wisdom. And if you're one of them, welcome to the light outside the cave.